light, I think it's that one right at the top, can be used so that we have better lighting.
Yes.
Or even this side. I don't see commission staff here. Maybe send an SMS to them. The technicians must just see whether we can have another light that will give us better lighting in this area. Yes, okay.
I'm told it's been attended to, Mr. Now, Mr. Holele, can I now take you to paragraph 6 of your affidavit, where you refer to the affidavit of Ms. Ngoyi and Mr. Dingizwayo. Now, Mr. Dingizwayo's affidavit we've already dealt with because that was that letter, the prodigy letter, you remember?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, where do we go now?
Paragraph 6 of Mr. Holele's affidavit.
Of Mr. Molefe's affidavit?
No, Mr. Holele's affidavit, yes.
Okay. By the way, what page was that, or under what divider was that?
Under SS10.
SS
10.
10.
10.
Yeah. Okay, I think what your team should do after this is to make sure that the dividers that are marked SS are more visible.
Yes,
They are overshadowed by the red dividers. SS10.
I'm just devising a solution in my mind, Mr. Chairman, and I think I know what I'm going to do is ask that they be placed at the top of the document rather than on the side.
Mm.
Because on the side what you have is the annexure numbers.
Yeah.
And that is what is confusing.
Yeah.
But as soon as we finish for today, I'll deal with that.
Okay. What paragraph in Mr. Holele's affidavit? 7?
Paragraph 6, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So we've dealt with Mr. Dingizwayo's affidavit, and you might remember, Mr. Holele, I referred you to that letter from Prodigy that Mr. Montana asked you to act upon.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now I want to deal with the affidavit of Ms. Ngoyi. I think there are 2 references to you. Mr. Chairperson, Ms. Ngoyi's affidavit is SS7. I've given your registrar an indication of where I will be taking Mr. Holele and obviously yourself.
Well, let's admit it now that you are going to refer to it.
Yes.
The affidavit of Ms. Onikamata Ngoya and its annexures will be admitted and marked as Exhibit WS7.
As you please. Jeffers, may I just make this point so when you are considering the matter, you will know that in fact there are 2 affidavits, Ms. Ngoyi.
Oh, yes.
This is the second one, the one made in February.
Yes.
She'd made one in September last year. I'm going to come to that in a moment.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm dealing with the February 2020.
But they are all in the same file.
They're all in the same.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Holele, can I ask you to then please turn to page 282 of that affidavit, on the top right-hand corner in the red number.
We just have to keep on saying of Exhibit S7,
As
so the
sub-
reader of the transcript will know
Yes.
which bundle we are talking about.
Yes. So SS7, page 242. Have you got it? Yes. Now, you will see there in paragraph 15.4, Ms. Ngoi says, I was summoned to a meeting with
I'm sorry, did you say page 242?
282.
282. Okay, thank you.
And it's paragraph 15.4.
I've got it.
So she says she was summoned to a meeting with representatives of Strawberry Walks. Who is Strawberry Walks, or who was Strawberry Walks?
Strawberry Works is an outdoor advertising company that had a contract to do PRASA's outdoor advertising work. To sell, the advertising rights.
She says at this meeting was a Mr. Maraj, a Mr. Ashwir Durka Prasad, and Mr. Selvin Mudley. Do you know who Mr. Selvin Mudley is?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Who is he?
He's the son of Mr. Roy Mudley.
Is Mr. Roy Mudley's son?
Yes.
Okay.
And was he associated with Strawberry Walk?
Yes, he was, Chair.
Now, to the best of your knowledge, was Mr. Roy Mudley associated with Strawberry Walk formerly?
No, I don't know. I know Selvin.
So he says one of the people at the meeting, Ms. Ngoi says, one of the people who was at the meeting was you.
Yes, Chair.
And you recall this meeting?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Okay. So just read from the point I've pointed out that you were at the meeting, what she says, and tell the chairperson whether you confirm what Ms. Ngoi says in this affidavit, because that's what you've done in paragraph 8 of your affidavit.
It reads, there I was given instructions by the representatives of Strawberry Works on how I ought to manage the advertising portfolio and how I was expected to take instructions from them.
Just hold on 1 minute. You were present at this meeting.
Yes, I was, Chair.
What was your reaction to that? Well, firstly, did that happen?
Yes, it did.
What was your reaction to that?
It was quite shocking, Chair. But this one was a really conflictual meeting.
This was
a very conflictual meeting. So this was a real tense and tough meeting.
Well, maybe let's go back. How did you come to be in this meeting?
Because of my role, Chairperson, as Group Chief Strategy Officer, I would be involved in a whole range of different issues that really went to the heart of PRASA strategy. So the advertising portfolio in PRASA would be covered under the secondary mandate as given by the Legal Succession Act. And the Legal Succession Act says that the assets that PRASA acquires, it must exploit to generate revenue. So the advertising portfolio was quite central to that. So just as head of strategy, I would, especially where there were difficulties, I would just generally be there.
Now, Ms. Ngoya says she was summoned to the meeting.
Yes.
Were you there because you had also been summoned, or you were invited to the meeting? And
this one I don't recall, Chair. Chances are that Ms. Ngoya herself would have invited me to this meeting.
Okay, but you were there.
I was there
from the time that she was there up to the time either the meeting ended or when she left. You left with her.
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, all right. You may continue.
And then what happened next, according to Ms. Ngoi?
I was even told that they have the power to remove the portfolio from Intersight and had intended to do so because I clearly did not know what I was doing.
Just hold on there for Where was Ms. Ngoyi based at that time?
She was the CEO of Intersite Asset Investments, Chairperson.
And what was this meeting about?
So there was litigation between Prime Media and PRASA. Prime Media had taken PRASA to court for the award of the advertising contract.
Through Strawberry Walk.
Through I think the other company was ProVantage, and Strawberry Works was in partnership with ProVantage or something like that. But they were all in. So these were the new entities that were managing the advertising portfolio. Prime Media had lost out on that contract. So there was litigation between Prime Media taking PRASA to court. Now, this meeting was about Strawberry Works' unhappiness with how Intersite was firstly managing the portfolio and how it was managing the litigation. That was the purpose of this meeting.
Okay.
So, coming to the point of the litigation, well, firstly, they said that they have the power to remove the portfolio from Intersite because Ms. Ngoyi allegedly didn't know what she was doing. What was her response to that?
Ms. Ngoyi is a very feisty person.
Is a very?
Feisty person. And she took it on, and the meeting, she fought like a bull. It was just conflict. She took great exception to those assertions.
And what did she say, though, at the meeting?
One sec. I think you may be standing too far from your mic.
I'm sorry.
And before lunch, they had been, but from the witnesses' side, but they are challenging now again. It may be that nothing to do with you. Maybe somebody needs to do something to the mic. But just try again, yeah.
Well, she took. I recall, I think, doesn't credibility that here she was being told that she doesn't know what she's doing.
And that a client was going to tell PRASA how it should oversee the client's work.
Yes, it took great exception to that.
Then you say that the second issue was that Strawberry Works apparently was unhappy with the way PRASA was handling the litigation. Now, Ms. Ngoyi deals with that in paragraph 15.5. What happened in that regard?
I think the demand by Strawberry Works was that the lawyers should be changed. The lawyers who were representing PRASA in this litigation should be changed.
And who were the lawyers who were representing PRASA?
It was Hogan Lovells.
Now, can I then, just dealing with that point, ask you to turn to the next page at paragraph 15.6. Ms. Ngoyi then describes what happened as a result of Strawberry's unhappiness. What does she say happened? If you look at halfway down that paragraph, however, in May or June 2013.
Should I read this?
Yes.
However, in May or June 2013, the portfolio was moved from Intersite to PRASA, and Hogan Lovells were promptly removed from the brief by the special legal advisor in the office of the group CEO, Ms. Malini Naidu, and replaced with a different firm. The last attorneys who handled the matter was Maraj attorneys who coincidentally happen to also be attorneys of record of Strawberry Works.
Can I just ask you to go back to paragraph 15.4?
So just before that, Mr. Soni, so the meeting that you were testifying about a few minutes ago included Strawberry Walks and Mr. Selwyn Motley, who you said is Mr. Roy Motley's son. Is that right?
Yes, Chair.
And at that meeting, these people were demanding that PRASA what
Yes.
they say clearly.
Yes. Perhaps he should sit here then.
Yeah, yes, because I can hear you quite well, but I've been struggling.
Yes.
So maybe it's the distance.
It's
The
the
further
distance.
somebody is from me, the better.
Yes.
Maybe. But I don't know whether that's going to be easy, and probably, and whether it will need any adjustment. But I see that the mic that Mr. Holele was using has a base, and I don't know whether that's removable to be taken to the end of the, to where the witness will be, or whether they need another one. Maybe, Mr. Soni, you can talk to the technicians to see whether
Yes.
they will need, or should we adjourn for a short time? Yeah, I think let's take a short adjournment to
I'm sorry.
allow everything to be sorted out. We'll take a 5 minutes adjournment. We adjourn.
Can you test this, Delene? 1, 2, close by.
Testing. 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 Yeah, I can move. Yeah. Sure. Testing. Testing. No, yeah. So after. And you respond. It's fine. It is fine. I'll be talking that way. Yes, Chair. I've got it. So, what you have, okay. Hello? It is what? Then I'm fine.
What I'm saying by saying, if you're looking for SSC level,
Testing. Testing is it? Inga authentic. Yeah. To record it. Yes. The mic is on. Mic is on.
Raise your right hand. Ayikho. Yeah, just hold it like this. I, Jacob, Ekanya, Mudimo.
Yes, Mr. Sone. Your mic is not on. Yes.
As you please, Mr. Witness. The next witness is going to be Mr. Makwantala Jacob Rakgoathe.
Yes.
His affidavit is
before
SS11.
Before that, I thought we were going to try something else.
Sorry, I should have informed.
Did the technician say it was not going to work?
It couldn't work because none of the others are active.
I've got the base or are active.
Yes.
And what needs to be done to make them active? I think Reverend Stimela wants to tell you something. Unless the technicians tell me that it won't make a difference.
For today, they have suggested they've adjusted the mic and they will attend to this tomorrow because it needs an activation process.
Which is not possible
It
now.
can't be done today.
Okay, good. But is this supposed to be better now?
That's what
The hope.
the technician
Okay.
said.
All right, let's see. Okay, we can continue.
Can the witness be sworn in?
Please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Mawanatala Jacob Rakgoathe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No,
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. You may be seated. Yes, Mr. Sona.
As you please, Mr. Chairperson. Mr. Rakgoathe, in front of you is a document headed affidavit. You recognize that document?
I do, Chair.
Well, first, is the document not in the same bundle that we were using?
Yes.
I think just to state that for whoever
for the
reads the
record,
transcript,
yes.
they know we are still using the same
Yes.
bundle.
And is that document on the top right-hand corner marked SS11?
Correct.
The file, this witness's affidavit is contained in the same bundle that we were using earlier on in respect of Mr. Holele's evidence that contains exhibits SS5, SS8, SS9, SS10, SS11, SS12. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before I start examining the witness, my learned friend for Mr. Moodley and Prodigy wishes to place himself on record.
For Mr. Yeah, please come through. I thought we had done that.
Thank you, Judge.
Oh, that might involve somebody else.
That was the previous witness, Judge.
Yes,
Likewise.
no, we don't have to get you to place yourself on record for each one unless there is some additional person you represent in regard to whom you didn't place yourself on record.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah, if it's the same people, it's fine.
I will leave it with the same reservation as with all the witnesses.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rakgoathe, have you read the affidavit in front of you?
Yes, I have.
The signature at the bottom of that affidavit, is that your signature?
It is indeed.
Do you confirm that
Is that at the bottom of the second page of the affidavit?
That's correct.
Yes, okay.
And do you confirm that what's contained in this affidavit is true and correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Now, you've heard the evidence of Mr. Holele about the meeting in February, March 2017, at which he, and Mr. Moodley were present.
Correct.
Tell the chairperson how it came about that you went to that meeting.
Chair, I was called by my colleague, Mr. Holele. I was sitting in my office.
Just one sec before that. Mr. Soni, traditionally, the witness who would testify, shall we say, on the same side, wouldn't be listening, wouldn't be in the room. But because the idea would be that his evidence must be based on his own memory. But it's tricky because these proceedings are broadcast. So even if somebody is not in the room, they may be watching and listening. But it does create that challenge because one would have preferred that he was not listening to that evidence and that you would ask him and he would give his evidence as he recalls it without having listened, without having been in the room when the evidence was given. But those are the challenges that come with technology and, yeah. Okay, your mic is not on again.
Sorry, please accept that we did debate this, and the very issue you raised is if Mr. Rakgoathe is sitting next door, he'd be able to have it. But Mr. Chairperson, I think you are right, or submit you are right, and that in future we must ensure a disjuncture between who is the person giving evidence and the person who is listening.
It's as I say, it's tricky, but if somebody is known to have been sitting here and listening to evidence of a witness, that later on he or she is required to corroborate if she or he is able to. The way to put on that evidence is not the same as that of somebody who might not have been in the room. So it detracts from the weight.
Yes.
But as I say, sometimes somebody is listening and they don't even know they'll end up being called.
No,
But they get called and then they give evidence. So it's just that we need to be alive to these challenges and see what needs to be done.
Mr. Chairperson, may I just say that I think the Commission should err on the side of propriety rather than convenience and say, well, it could have. And I think that is the rule we should apply.
Yes, yeah. Because, of course, it will be open to anybody who might want to challenge his evidence to say, but what weight can we put on, can the Commission put on his evidence? Because he was sitting here, he had everything that Mr. Holele says. He then comes after Mr. Holele and says, yes, he's right, but he was sitting here, he listened to everything.
I have no answer, Mr. Chairman, and we just need to learn from this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now, you've heard the evidence of Mr. Holele, and as the chairperson has rightly pointed out, perhaps you shouldn't have been here. But before you made your statement, you had seen his statement. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And you, in fact, say that you confirm what he has said in
That's
his
correct,
statement.
Chair.
Now let's just get to the nub of your evidence, Mr. Rakgoathe. We know this meeting happened. So tell us in your own words what happened at the meeting. In other words, how did you, we know that Mr. Holele invited you to the meeting, but where was the meeting held?
The meeting was held.
Let's just make sure, is the meeting that Mr. Holele said happened in March or February 2017?
17.
That's the meeting you're talking about?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I can't remember the date specifically as indicated by Mr. Holele, but certainly I remember the meeting that I was invited to by him. As I indicated, Chair, I was sitting in my office and Mr. Holele called me from the office, from my office, and says, please join me in a meeting. When I inquired what was the meeting about, he says, come. And I said, okay, let me just go with a colleague. And then the meeting was in the section we call the Group CO section in one of the boardrooms. And as I indicated, I was not aware what the meeting or what the subject of the meeting was, or who we were meeting for that matter. And when we walked into that boardroom, there was a gentleman sitting. I didn't know the name, I didn't know the person. It was my first encounter with the gentleman. I remember he was introduced, but I didn't take it to note because that was not part of the meeting, so I didn't know, I was not prepared for that particular meeting. We then sat down, and the nub of the discussion was that PRASA owes Prodigy a certain sum of money for the services rendered. And Mr. Moodley then indicated that he is surprised that we're defending, effectively that we're surprised why we're defending the matter for service that had been rendered. He did most of the talking, and I then, when it came to my turn to speak in the meeting, I then indicated to Mr. Moodley and said, if you mind, obviously, on making a proposal, that he must make the proposal formally, and that would be considered by PRASA attorneys so that the matter could be looked at. it was difficult to say we rebuffed his decision or his proposal or his demand for payment, other than the fact that we kind of process it and say you need to process what you require from PRASA through a process that we indicated. And the process, I said to him that he must make a formal proposal to our lawyers so that the matter, because the matter was in court at that stage, for the proposal to be considered.
Before you carry on, can I just ask you this? Was any figure mentioned to the best of your knowledge?
I can't remember the number, if there was a number that was mentioned in the meeting, Chair.
And were you aware of the dispute, the fact of the dispute and the nature of the dispute?
I was at high level. I'm part of the group legal risk and compliance. My role is compliance. So we hold meetings regularly to discuss the workload that we have through the group risk legal meeting. That matter was mentioned, but I can't remember the nature and the substance of the meeting, but it was one of the matters that was mentioned.
And when you sort of rebuffed the demand, what was Mr. Moodley's reaction?
Well, I suppose it was insisting there was a stalemate, but what I remember is that at the tail end of the meeting, he then mentioned that he was part of the top 15 or 17. I recall to be 17, but I could be on advisement to be 15 or 17. But he was part of the decision makers, and that decision making involved appointments or looking at nominations for state-owned enterprises, CEOs. And that, you know, when the decision, and that the young man is coming, he did say that the young man may be coming, and as a result, we must be on the right side of the changes that are imminent.
So can I just get back to precisely what Mr. Moodley said in relation to being one of the top 15, and you say you can't remember it was 15 or 17. Did he mention one number or did he mention both?
He mentioned one number, but I thought in my head that it was a 17, but it could have been a 15, Chair. So I can't remember in precise terms.
So he either said, I am one of the top 15 decision makers in the country, or he said, I'm one of the top 17 decision makers in the country.
Correct.
And decisions relating to what?
He said that decision involves the nominations of state-owned enterprises CEO as part of the decision-making process that we're involved in.
And what did
Hang on, I'm sorry. Did you say he said he was one of the top, either 15 or 17? You can't remember which one he said, but you think he said 17. 17. Did you say decision makers? I just want to...
He said decision makers.
In the country, or how did you put it?
I can't remember whether in relation to the country, but certainly that reference was to state-owned enterprises CEOs.
So was he saying he was one of the top 17 decision makers in relation to state-owned enterprises?
CEOs, correct.
Sorry?
CEOs.
Yeah. CEOs.
CEOs, Chief Executive Officers. Yes.
Okay, no, let me just get that. He was saying he was one of the top 17 decision makers in relation to the appointment of CEOs of state enterprises.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And what did you understand by that? I mean, I know it's almost obvious, but what did you understand by that?
Chair, I understood two things that stuck to me. I didn't know the man, and I didn't know the extent of his power. So when he mentioned that, the back of the mind was, he's probably informing us that we must understand that if the changes come, we might be on the right, as indicated, we must be on the right side. Or maybe it may have been a ploy, because the basis of our discussion was that he wanted payment. We say, you dare not make payment. Those are the kind of things that ran in my head.
Okay, so those are the two things that went in your mind at that time.
That's correct.
Let me ask you, you had not met Mr. Mudley before this meeting.
No, I have not.
After the meeting, did you become aware of Mr. Mudley and his dealings with PRASA?
I have become aware of it, certainly succinctly, when I read the book by Jack Paul, The Prison Keepers. That's when I then formed a notion about the extent of his power, at least as indicated in that book. And say that possibly was the person that we spoke to, and maybe has the reach that he indicated.
Prior to this meeting, you say you had not met Mr. Mudley.
No, I had not met Mr.
Had you heard of him?
I've heard of him in the corridors, but not in
Yes.
so many greater details. As to,
Okay.
And what was the talk in the corridors? Mr. Chairperson, I'm aware of hearsay, but I wanted for a different context, just to say that was the thinking.
Yeah. What did you know about him that people may have been saying within PRASA about him?
Certainly with relation to the strawberry, because before I joined PRASA as a compliance, I had been working at Intersite Asset Investment, and I was in the CEO's office, in Martha's office. There was a rumor that he was aligned to Strawberry Works.
So when you talk about Martha, you're talking about Ms. Ngoyi.
That's correct.
This is the person that Mr. Holele talked about being at one of those meetings as well.
That's correct.
Now, did you treat this as just a boast, or did after the meeting you ask Mr. Holele, but who is this person to tell us about how we should operate?
I did ask Mr. Holele about the person, and then he said, no, that's Mr. Roy Mudley. But obviously I didn't go to the great extent of saying what power does he have within PRASA. But at some point, I think because of my experience as a lawyer, I thought it might be name dropping, and maybe that the extent of what he wanted to show off, that he's got power within PRASA, and that in fact he's got power that is external PRASA, that he can make changes that would have effect within PRASA.
Hindsight sometimes throws greater light on what happened before. You thereafter read Jack Paul's book, The President's Keeper.
That's correct.
When you read the book, did you then go, in your own mind, go back to this incident where Mr. Mudley had told you what powers he supposedly had?
It did really spark the memory and say, oh, that might be the person that when he said that he's got power, that he probably might have the power that he indicated he has.
After the meeting, immediately after the meeting, you didn't have any further dealings with Mr. Mudley?
Not at all.
Or with Prodigy?
Not at all, Chair.
And what's happened to the dispute between Prodigy and PRASA, the one that Mr. Mudley was demanding payment in respect of?
I am not too, although I'm part of the legal, but I didn't deal with the matter, and I'm not too sure how far it is currently, or where it ended, if it has ended.
Well, evidence will be laid about that, Mr. Dingiswayo, but you have no idea where that is.
No, I don't have a recollection of the end of that matter, Chair.
Now, Mr. Mudley said, I am one of the top 15 or 17 people who appoint or nominate people to be appointed as CEOs of SOEs.
That's correct.
What else did he say in relation to PRASA itself?
Other than that the young man was coming back, I can't recall any other matter that he may have mentioned in the meeting.
Now, when he said the young man is coming back, what did you understand him to mean by that?
I understood, Chair, that he was referencing obviously that because the discussion was prefaced by one of the top 15, 17 decision makers of SOEs, and therefore reference would have been to at that stage, PRASA didn't have a full-time or permanent CEO, and therefore the reference would have been to a CEO who had been gone and coming back, and I could only relate it to Mr. Montana who had left, although in 2015 and in 2017 that could be the person.
So that's what you understood. That he meant.
Correct.
Now, he also said you need to be on the right side of the changes that are coming.
That's correct.
Right. Now, what did you understand by that? That you must be on the right side of the changes in relation to the decision you were going to make in regard to his proposal?
Yeah, as I indicated, there are two things. That it's either there's going to be some serious challenges to us at work because of the decision. Well, I call it no decision because we just indicated the correct process that he needed to follow, or for having rebuffed by myself or Tiro. But alternatively, as I said, at that time in the meeting, I thought it might be a norm-dropping exercise. So it's trying to nudge us to rethink what he had proposed.
But if he was not name-dropping, then you understood by resisting his demand or not acceding to his demand, you were risking being on the wrong side. You reconciled yourself with that.
Correct. I think in hindsight, after reading the book Jacques Paul, and then I realized he probably might have power. Probably there might have been that our careers at PRASA, my career at PRASA would have been stunted. But I hadn't been on the bad side of either Mr. Montana or Mr. Moodley to have experienced that and say it certainly is going to happen. But that assumption certainly was something that I could make based on at least on the reflection that I had 2 years down the line when I read Jacques Paul's book.
You say you were not on the wrong side of Mr. Montana. Are you aware of people who were on the wrong side of Mr. Montana?
Correct.
And what happened to them?
The allegation, well, call it the reality that Mr. Chauke experienced at PRASA, because he was a colleague that I worked with, although I was not involved intricately with his disciplinary, was, as indicated in the corridors, it was an insistence that came from Strawberry Works, which was aligned to Mr. Moodley, as I indicated, and then through Mr. Montana that he then got suspended.
Are there any other people who suffered any disadvantage as a result of being on the wrong side of Mr. Montana that you're aware of?
I'll be speculating other than corridor talk. The fate that Mr. Holele suffered, I know he moved to PRASA, but I can't tell you the details about the reason and the reason he was suspended. It would be highly speculative on my part.
Jefferson, those are the questions I have for this witness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rakgoathe. Did I pronounce it correctly?
It is Rakgoathe. Rakgoathe.
Rakgoathe. Thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. If we need you again, I will ask you to come back, but for now you are excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated earlier this morning, our next witness is going to be Mr. Popo Malefe. May I have leave to call him?
Yes. Before you proceed, Mr. Sonny, did somebody speak to the technicians about
The
giving us
light.
more light?
Mr. Chairman, we could not find any of the technicians here, but we've escalated it at the commission level.
Somebody must just speak to somebody. The
Yes.
lighting is very poor, really, here at the front.
I've been told it has been escalated.
Well, you don't know with these
It
government
doesn't
things.
help,
Maybe
of course.
escalating it mean we'll get the answer on Friday.
As it is.
Because, I mean, somebody should just talk to somebody. I would imagine nobody should have any objection to giving us more light. I don't know if it's something that must go to committees in the municipalities. I mean, it was before lunch, actually quite early when we
Yes.
started, that I
Yes.
raised the issue.
You did.
Yes, okay.
May the witness
Yes,
be sworn in.
please administer the oath. I think it was the oath last time, so, well, affirmation if it has changed.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Popo Simon Molete.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
I do not.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do, sir.
Do you swear that the evidence you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Molefe. You're coming back for the second time, and we appreciate it very much. When you were here, of course, it was about Transnet. This time it's about PRASA, but we appreciate that you are back. Thank you. Are you able to hear me well there, Mr. Molefe? Mr. Molefe, are you able to hear me?
I do, Chairperson, I do hear you.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Molefe, you have an affidavit before you.
It looks like you are not comfortable there. Is that
It
because of the
certainly looks
microphone?
so, yes.
Very low.
One chair should be taken out or what? Or they can't be taken out? Will somebody assist him? I think somebody will come and assist you. You didn't look comfortable. Or the chair's too short, too low, yeah. Is there something that can be done to raise it, or is there nothing that can be done? Oh.
We will just change the sitting position, the chairs.
Yes, you look kind of squashed. But are you
Okay,
comfortable?
no, I will sit this way.
Yeah, as long as you are comfortable. Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Molefe, you have an affidavit in front of you. Am I correct?
I do, sir.
And on the top,
May I request that before we proceed
Yes.
with that affidavit, I make certain
Some corrections.
some corrections because I've not had the opportunity to sit with counsel.
Oh, is that so?
And, I think
Okay.
I just need
Yes.
the opportunity if we could.
Well, we can do one of two things. We can take a 5 minutes adjournment for you to alert him to what you wish to be corrected.
I think it's better that way.
It's better that way. Yeah, let's take about 5 minutes adjournment. So we adjourn.
I am ready.
I can see you've even got your mic on.
Thank you very much.
We ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's proceed.
Mr. Chairperson, may I quickly go through those? They, it's only about 5 paragraphs, and they deal with just dates mainly. Or would you like me to do it?
There are 2 ways in which we can do it. One is to point them out now.
Yes.
Another is to keep an eye on them, and as and when he reaches the point where he talks about the part of the affidavit where the mistakes or errors are, that he can deal with them.
Yes.
I'm happy with either.
In view of the fact that some of the dates are quite crucial, I'm going to ask if we can't, and it's not going to take more than about 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. Of course, it may be necessary to arrange for a supplementary affidavit to correct it, but for purposes of today, the errors can be pointed out.
Yes. Mr. Molefe, you've raised with me a number of issues. I just want to go through the ones that are worrying you. If you look at paragraph 1, you say...
I'm sorry. I may have intervened earlier before the adjournment when you were still about to get him to identify his affidavit, confirm that it is his affidavit.
Yes.
So you want to do that first?
Yes. Ms. Molefe, you accept that your affidavit has been marked SS6. You'll see that on the top right-hand corner.
Yes, sir.
Except for those corrections that we are going to go through now, do you confirm that what's contained in this affidavit is true and correct?
I do, Chairperson.
All right. Let's just look at those matters that are of some concern to you. Firstly, in paragraph 1, in the second line, you say, during the period 1st of August 2014 to, and you've got the 30th of August 2017. What did you want to change in that?
The correct date, Chairperson, is the 31st of July 2017.
Is that in the place?
So you substitute 31st July for 30th August.
Yes, okay.
Now, paragraphs 2 and 3 that you dealt with are grammatical mistakes, and we can deal with them a little later. May I, though, because this worries you, at paragraph 30,
Yes, sir.
in the last sentence of that paragraph, you say all this continued until Mr. Montana left office on the 31st of March 2015. You want to change that date?
Chairperson, I want to substitute 15th July 2015 for the 31st March 2015.
15 July 2015. That's what it should be,
Yes,
is that right? Well, I can tell you that when I read this affidavit, I saw this date, I made a note, a wrong date.
That's why I wanted to correct it before.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then paragraph 50, Mr. Molefe, on the 4th line, you say, starting at the end of the 3rd line, the Department of Transport later launched the multi-million rand taxi recapitalized program. What did you want to change?
I'm sorry, which paragraph?
Oh, sorry. paragraph 50, Mr. Chairperson.
150, paragraph
50,
50, it's in line 4.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I've got it.
So it should be multi-billion rand instead of multi-million.
Thank you. Thank you.
Those are the essential changes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we will have Mr.
Some minor
Chairperson,
ones later.
Yes. I want to also say, Mr. Chairperson, you will recall that when you look at the annexures, some of the annexures have been removed from Mr. Molefe's affidavit and put up under references and legislation and so on. That affidavit will deal with that as well.
Okay.
All right, so let's go again now, Mr. Molefe, is that this is not the first time you are coming to this commission. You've given evidence before in relation to state capture in respect of Transnet, am I correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Now, just at a level where people would understand, the nature of the evidence you are going to be giving in this affidavit, is that in substance different from the nature of the evidence? I'm not talking about the details. In other words, about state capture.
Would you please repeat the question?
Yes. Okay, perhaps I could leave it. I'm just trying to say...
Or maybe, well, what if we put it this way? If you look at the evidence you are going to give today with regard to PRASA, and having regard to the evidence you gave with regard to Transnet, in the context of state capture, are there any common features that you are able to identify?
There are certainly common features,
Yes.
Chairperson, which I would
Which
we
you will
will
deal with.
elaborate on as we
Yes.
go along.
Does that cover what you wanted to?
Indeed, and I'm grateful to you, Mr. Chairperson. But I just want to ask a follow-up question to that. Are there unique features or different features in PRASA? And that too we can cover, but I'm just asking so that we know we should be alert to that.
The unique features are to the extent of the individuals who feature and who are considered to be behind the capture of the state. But the modus operandi in both instances has certain commonalities.
Now, in paragraph 5 of your affidavit, you set out why, in your view, your experiences at PRASA will assist the Commission to better understand and make recommendations in respect of state capture. Can you explain to the Chairperson what those particular features are?
Well, the Chairperson, the features really which I set out in my statement.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mulefe, I'm going to disturb you. Mr. Soni, I may be mistaken, but it may be because there were some corrections to be made under paragraph 1. You thought that has been dealt with in terms of him saying when he became chairperson of the board and what the term was.
Yes.
Or has that been covered?
That has been covered.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm afraid you might have to ask the question again
Yes.
because I've now intervened.
Not at all. Ms. Molefe, if you look at paragraph 5 of your affidavit, now I just want to ask you to consider what you've said in paragraph 5 and set out for the Chairperson why your experiences at PRASA will assist this Commission. You've set it out in paragraph 5.
Basically, what I'm saying, Chairperson, is that in order facilitate the capture, which is fundamentally of PRASA, but we do it within the context of state capture, that the modus operandi was firstly to capture people who hold positions of trust and responsibility. And that was done by those at the heart of state capture. And they do so because these individuals have the authority and influence in awarding tenders. These people were made vulnerable by those who had the intent on capturing the organs of state, in this instance, PRASA. But I also seek to show that individuals and institutions which were under obligation and duty to protect PRASA, and those who were made vulnerable, failed to fulfill that duty, and as a result allowed the capture of PRASA to succeed and to benefit certain individuals and entities concerned. We will, when we talk of institutions, we'll deal with those matters later on when we refer to the portfolio committees, parliament, even organs of state who had a duty to discharge a constitutional mandate of dealing with the malfeasance.
And to your credit, as emerges from the court cases that are before the chairperson, you took on some of these institutions. You took on the minister when she dissolved your board. You took on the Hawks when they refused to make certain investigations.
It is so, Chairperson, that that is what we did. I did, well, representing the Board of Directors, the Board of Control of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Well, firstly, that we had gone into detailed investigation laid before the Hawks volumes of evidence in Liver Arch files, even made available to them forensic capacity so that they could analyze instances of corruption and also be able to follow the funds, of course, and collaborate with other state institutions which had that responsibility. But of course, it is now a matter of record that they refused to do their job. Secondly, we, as the board, we rejected an attempt of abuse of office by the executive authority to muzzle the board and prevent it from doing what was right in discharging its fiduciary duties. And in this instance, we'll later deal with what the minister did. The third aspect is what the portfolio committee, whose responsibility is to assess the work of this all-important state-owned company objectively, and to take together with the board of directors corrective measures which could strengthen the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. And that of course did not happen. I wrote to the Speaker of Parliament on behalf of the board to ask for a public inquiry on maladministration in PRASA, and of course the relationship between the minister and the board of directors. Similarly, I wrote to the portfolio committee on transport, again asking that committee discharge its responsibility in a far more dignified way and in a professional manner. All of that is detailed in, I'm sure Council will refer me to those documents. Council, I might just go on and on. Maybe I must allow you to lead me.
Well, I was about to say maybe he should council should have allowed you to come at the right time to those issues because they are very important issues. And I myself am very interested in your evidence in regard to those efforts that you made and the question of lack of support that you talk about from quarters where you expected support. And as you say, failure to perform constitutional obligations by certain bodies. So, so when we come to that point, I'll be very interested in those parts. Yes.
Ms. Molefe, just in order to understand the structure of the affidavit, you do not deal with matters necessarily in a chronological order. You deal with them in terms of different subjects. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Among the subjects that you raise are the problems that PRASA, that the new board encountered after it was appointed in August 2014. Is that correct? I'm just going through it so we can deal with each one, but we have a roadmap for whoever is listening as to what's coming next.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Okay, and then you then deal with an attempt by Mr. Mudley to capture you personally. It's all there. I'm just going through it.
That is correct, Chairperson.
And then you deal with the deterioration in the relationship between you and Mr. Montana. Well, you and the board on the one hand and Mr. Montana on the other.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Then you also say that you found certain very worrying features about the governance, including some quite lucrative contracts that had been concluded just before your board took office.
That is correct.
And you detail them. Then you say after Mr. Montana left, the former president called you to a meeting where he was attempting to persuade you and the board to reinstate Mr. Montana, notwithstanding that he had handed in his resignation and the resignation had been accepted by the board.
That is correct. By the way, I need also to state, Council, that...
And you must please address the chairperson.
Chairperson, that in reality, Mr. Montana's contract was ending on the 31st of March 2015. It is therefore a misnomer to even talk of him resigning. But that's what he said to us, because he had actually requested that he be allowed to work with the board for another 6 months to assist the board in its search for a new group CEO. And it is in that context, therefore, that we allowed him to stay longer, and we're talking about the 15th of July.
But that's important to note, because when I was reading here, I was just seeing references to letter of resignation, and acceptance of resignation. So that's what the letter said, but his term was coming, his contract was coming to an end, and there was no need to resign.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Save that he could, of course, as per what he said was the commitment he made to serve an extra 6 months, and that he wanted to use that 6 months to assist the board of directors, a board of control in its search for the new CEO. But of course, in hindsight, now after the investigations that happened, it is now clear to me that he wanted the 6 months to continue covering up the corrupt activities that had taken place under his watch.
Yes, thank you.
Then you deal with the fact that you made several attempts, and you've referred to them, to take the Hawks to court, to take the minister to court, to reach out to the speaker, to have a proper investigation into matters concerning PRASA. And on each of those occasions, you were spurned effectively.
It is so, Chairperson.
And then finally, you lament the fact that the board was allowed to effectively disintegrate because no new appointments were made. And since your board has been dissolved effectively, there has been no permanent board.
Chairperson, I think at that point, it had become clear to me that now that the individual who is to deny
when they become relevant. And then,
Yes.
and a state-owned entity of the Minister of Public Enterprises, as do most of the major.
Are you now starting the evidence outlining?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Okay,
generate the kinds of profits which Central Energy Fund and the Strategic Fuel Fund, as well as Corporation of South Africa, Petro SA, they would fall under the minerals and energy. You would have similar others falling, for example, under different departments. AMSCO would fall under the Ministry of Defense, the Armaments Corporation of South Africa.
Yes. Then you then make the point that the accounting authority of PRASA is the board.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Right. And we will deal with the legislation in terms of which the board is to be appointed at a later stage. I just want to set the scenario for, as far as, because procurement is an important issue, you say that as the accounting authority, the board had to involve itself in ensuring that there were proper processes for the procurement of goods in terms of the PFMA.
Yeah, that is correct, Chairperson.
Then you say it's...
Please try and get him to give evidence.
sorry.
Get him to be the one giving the evidence.
Yes. Now, what are PRASA's main objects in business? If you look at paragraph 10, you deal with that issue there, Mr. Rakgoathe.
I have already said, Chairperson, the primary mandate of PRASA is that of moving commuters within to and from South Africa. Large numbers of workers who are critical for fueling production in the business. But it also had a secondary mandate. The secondary mandate was that of, let me first say that moving those workers had to be done through the rail operations. To a lesser extent, the Autopax as the bus subsidiary of PRASA. Then the secondary mandate was to look at the assets that PRASA had and do what is normally in the business parlance called sweating those assets, generating out of those assets, optimizing them so that PRASA could generate its own income.
So those are the main things or principal objects of PRASA. And you then say
I don't have to mention all of them if there are many. There's some.
they would each have their own board of control as opposed to PRASA's board of control.
That is correct.
So they enjoyed a measure of independence, notwithstanding that they were subsidiaries of PRASA.
It is so, Chairperson, but I need to state that when we got onto the board of control of PRASA, it became immediately clear that by the fact the group CEO chairperson
subsidiary would be the group CEO of PRASA.
My recollection, Chairperson, is that there was no legal instrument that authorized the appointment of the group CEO.
You then say
So, did you want to cover some section before we adjourn? Or what's your attitude?
I would like to take this, like to take a bit of time to consider how to condense this.
Yes. Okay.
Because although it is necessary background, one can stick to certain facts.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if I could take later this evening to do that.
Yes.
And then sort of press ahead more quickly tomorrow morning.
Also, so you would prefer that we adjourn now?
We adjourn now on this.
Okay, all right. I think then we should adjourn now and then start at 10 tomorrow. We should be fine with starting at 10. We should be able to... do you contemplate that we would finish tomorrow with Mr. Molefer's evidence, or you think we might go beyond that?
We think it probably will spill over into Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine with you, Mr. Molefer.
It is fine.
It is fine. Okay. All right. We'll adjourn for the day. Now it's about 1 minute past 4, and we'll resume tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We adjourn.